Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone 2 Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Bend. I want to introduce you to my guest, Stef Skupin.
Skupin.
Skupin. Okay, because this is
I know.
German. Is it German?
It's German. Well, it's actually French. So the original would be Skupin, but I am German. Yes, so
Okay.
Skupin.
Skupin. Okay. Now, if it was French, maybe I had a little French when I was in school. Maybe I could have remembered that. But Stef is the owner and facilitator at The Leader's Work. And she has, as 15 years working as a veterinarian, said she learned that stress, even in the most difficult situations, is an option. And so she has a passion to help veterinarians, primary caregivers be more effective by cultivating the ability to stay calm, confident, and joyful at work. She teaches private sessions and workshops, and she helps her participants stay grounded in challenging situations, using their inner wisdom and building strong yet subtle support structures for themselves. She has written a book called Awakening from Fear, which describes how inquiry into everyday fears can lead to greater personal freedom. And she has also taught homeopathy for animals and breath water sound with the art of living. So I'm curious. I want to know about the breath water sound because that's something new to me. So thank you very much for being on The Bend today, Stef. And I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing you with the world, or my world, so to speak, whatever that might be. So tell us a little bit about your journey here, because you mentioned to me earlier when we were talking that you were to travel from Germany. You worked as a veterinarian in multiple countries, and then you're here. So tell us about your story.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Well, first of all, just let me very briefly say thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time and the interest. I'm slowly starting to see that I am a bit of a gypsy. Like, I would just like to go from here to here, and because there is so much to be learned in this world. There's the world is just so beautiful, and you meet so many amazing people on the journey. So I really tried to settle this time around. When I came to the US, there was this like, okay, this time I will settle. And after a couple of years, I went, you know what? Maybe I'm just a gypsy. Maybe this is not what I do. So anyway, so my journey to doing what I am doing. So I studied in Germany, graduated from Berlin University in 1999. And then, at that point, Germany was too small. So I went out and I started working in the UK. And then from then I went to South Africa, and I was in South Africa for almost 15 years. And that's where I met my husband, and I had my kids there. And my journey with veterinary medicine was that there was a moment that that decided I was going to study veterinary medicine, and it came about because I did a test that allowed me to get in despite not that great grades, and everybody was so excited for me to become a veterinarian. So I was like, okay, well, let me do that. And I think on the long run, that just wasn't the right career, like not for this particular career. It's not that I don't love animals. I've been a horse rider. I do have animals living with me, around me all the time. I feel very comfortable with them, and that part of veterinary medicine has always been great. I love being at a clinic, being around animals all day long. And I can also, I'm quite good with humans too.
Well, that is the perfect formula for a great veterinary career, is the people part of it to be the most difficult for
Right.
to manage.
It is for many people, yes. But I, that was, it wasn't my hardest piece. My hardest piece was start like was the amount of things that I needed to know to feel confident. And because I was like, I think I have a really high intuitive intelligence. So it wasn't difficult for me to get through the studies, but when I got out of college, I felt sorely underprepared, and you get thrown in the deep end. And it's like nowadays it's less so because there really are amazing mentorship programs and stuff, but for me it was terrifying. It was so terrifying. And and then the old vets, like, you work at the small practices and they just go like, oh, you'll be fine. you know
Yes.
they went through it too, so they survived. And you look at it and you go like, okay, maybe one day.
But for those old
Yeah.
vets, there was so much less to know. I think
And
that's,
that.
I feel like it's really important for us to stress, because I have been working in a veterinary hospital since 1985. And
Mm-hmm.
we only had two conversations at that point in the game, and it was about fleas and flea allergy dermatitis, or something like dire, like the animal had been hit by a car, and it was either that or just some kind of disaster. But
Mm-hmm.
we now, I mean, I can remember when we first started doing dentistry, and the first client I ever suggested it to looked at me like I had two heads and said, "Are you insane?" That's exactly his words to me. "Are you insane? You want to do what to my dog's teeth?" I went, "Well," so I can say that now I look at people who are trying to learn the profession, even as CSRs coming into it, and think, oh my God, there are so many products, so many processes, so many services that we do compared to when I started. And I learned them gradually, as they came
Mm-hmm.
into the profession, I was learning them one at a time. You have to walk in and learn them 50 at a time now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're much
Yes,
more complex. So,
exactly. And then on top of it, now since I started, there is this, this culture of litigation and this culture of blaming. It's not just litigation, it is also blaming.
yes.
Just in the small ways, like, I blamed myself for not knowing enough.
Mhm.
And nowadays you can put so much more blame onto your shoulders for not knowing enough because there's so much to know,
Yes. Yes,
right?
it is. Well, I read a really
Mm,
great line yesterday. There was a young veterinary technician. She called herself a baby tech. And she said this client came in with an animal who was just in deep distress, and they did what they could for it, but then the animal died. And then she
mhm,
blamed them for that. And a more experienced technician got on and said, my practice owner used to say, when I ask her, how do you take this? Because people will blame you. And she said they have to have somebody to blame other than themselves. And that's
mhm,
why I just can let it roll off my back, because it's not really me they're blaming. They're blaming
mhm.
themselves for not acting sooner, for not knowing more, for all those things, but they can't own that guilt because it's too painful. And so she says,
Exactly.
so I take it, but I take it and I let it roll because I realize where
Mhm,
it's coming from. It's just coming from grief. And I
mhm,
feel like that's such a mature attitude, and maybe something that you teach too, because I feel
mhm.
we, there is so much perfectionism in this profession, so much imposter syndrome in this profession, and realizing that you can't be perfect, you can't be always right, and that no matter what you do, sometimes the client will blame you for whatever it happens to be. And there will never be
Exactly.
anything you can do about that, because you can
Yeah,
only control yourself and you can't control what they do.
exactly. Exactly. And it's exactly what you're saying. This is what I've learned over the years, is that everything that comes at me, that somebody blames me, somebody's angry at me, this hurts because actually I'm holding this view of myself. So
Mhm.
if somebody like walks in front of me and says, you just killed that dog over there and I had nothing to do, it doesn't hurt at all. You just go like, yeah, you're insane. Nothing to do with that. Whereas when it hurts, if I hold like, yeah, maybe I could have done this better. Maybe there would have been something.
Mhm.
Maybe they're right. that is when it really hurts. And that goes for every single negative emotion that we think comes from them to us.
Mhm.
And that's what we carry. And so the process that I use is a way of using those judgments, like they're wrong, they shouldn't be blaming me, and really investigating them so that we understand. And what comes out of that understanding is compassion for ourselves
Mhm.
and for the other person, because not only do you know that this person who blames you, they have to put it somewhere because it's too painful.
Mhm.
We understand it because we're like, yeah, I do that same thing.
Mhm.
And in that we can connect to that person again, and we can go like, yeah, you know what, I feel you.
Mhm.
I feel you. This is so hard. I so wish this didn't happen,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah. I remember teaching a class one day, and one of my students, we were having them practice conflict and tell stories
Mhm,
of things that had actually happened in practice, and how some of the skills I taught could have helped them move beyond the conflict. And
mhm,
one of them said, well, what do you say when your client comes in and goes, I'm an attorney? Well,
mhm,
what is he really trying to say to you? His dog died. And what had happened was the dog had been in the prior day. He had been vaccinated. Everything on his physical was completely normal. And he went home and he died in the night. And
mm,
he comes back with, I don't understand why my dog died in the night. Why didn't you see something? And then I'm an attorney. And I said, what was the pain that he
mhm,
just said that I'm an attorney just to get your attention. But what did
mhm,
he really want you to say? And he really wanted to say, I understand your pain. I understand the frustration. I understand that it makes no sense. But
mhm,
also in human side of health, we have all known people who were perfectly fine and died the next day. It just happens that way sometimes, and you have no way to know that. And
mhm,
and people know that, they know
mhm.
that logically, but in the moment their heart hurts, and you have to see
Exactly.
what is happening in their heart, and
Mhm,
then give them the grace to move through that, and not react to it yourself. That's the other thing, because you can really make it worse by
mhm,
by becoming defensive and starting to get worse. And so it's one of the reasons I tell students, you really, if you are a good communicator, if you understand your brain, the people across the table from you, how the things are happening, then you don't have to worry about litigation, because people will not sue you when they feel like you truly care, that there is compassion
mhm.
and you understand where they're coming from. So I want to talk
Yes.
to you about how you got into like the training that you give people, the workshops that you do, and talk a little bit more about the mindset, how you learned this mindset and then moved into teaching other people.
My way into that was basically I for a while so as for a while what I tried to do with that terrifying is learn more, learn more, learn more. That's how I got into homeopathy. So my specialty became homeopathy. And in homeopathy at the time um we didn't have a lot of literature on animals. That since then there is a lot more, but back then we learned personality profiles of humans mostly, and just a little bit animals. So I really started to understand the difference of personality of humans, and it was fascinating. It
Mhm.
was so fascinating. It was the first time that I had a field of study in front of me that I really got into, because I was like, wow, this I want to know. I want to know. And but the other thing that during that time when I started learning, what also I was doing was I was drinking more. I was starting to take more drugs, like party drugs, and that got to a stage of where I couldn't control it. Like, so there was, like my relationship was really tottering. Like, I was together with my husband, and he's lovely, but it was really tough because I just wasn't coping without drinking anymore. And then that got to a stage of like going to a party and then only having 2 hours of sleep, going to work the next day and throwing up during work,
Oh.
really finding it hard to focus. And that day I went home and went like, it's not going to work like that. I can't do this anymore. I have to really make change. And so at that time, I then started to do therapy and do homeopathy. So, you go every month and you have a remedy. And so over years, really, that started to get me out of that. And around the same time, one of my friends is a meditation teacher, and she got me to come on my first course. And I continued to try and walk out.
Yeah.
It's like
I know.
the first evening, the first night, I was like, I went to the teacher and said, so I've looked at this. I looked at this, but it's not going to work for me.
I remember the first time I tried meditation, I felt like a squirrel in a cage. Like my mind was going tick, tick, and I'm like, no, pull that back, pull that back, pull it back. You're supposed to be.
Oh goodness, it was so difficult. It was like somebody, yeah, like a cage. Somebody's going to push a like thing on my head. Um, and then the first silent retreat a couple of years later, I actually did walk out without talking about anybody, because I knew if I'd started to ask, they would keep me there. But at the same time, I knew enough about myself to see those things as like, this is probably where you need to go if you're having that much resistance to it.
That's right. Yes.
And then one person said to me, you teach what you need to learn. And if you're getting into teaching, you know that you have to be the teacher who walks the talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to do teacher training. And that got me into doing my daily practice, because I couldn't stand up in front of people saying, this is good for me, for you,
Yes.
without doing it myself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what really got me into doing a practice every day. And so since 2009, I've been doing my meditation and my breathing technique almost every day. And so then I got interested into different spiritual books, and and then also I came across the work of Byron Katie, which is the main process I use. So I've enlarged around it and like used different things as well, but that is the main process. And it just really, it turned my world around. I read her first book, and it's called Loving What Is. And I saw the book and I went like, yeah, sure. That's cheesy to the extreme, and I put it over there. and then sometime, this is my twins were 5 months at the time, so I was home with them, but there was just like, oh my goodness, it was hard. And then I opened the book and I didn't put it, I'd like read it every moment I had time, and I cried so much through it. There was this woman who describes a way of lightness in her world, of patience, of compassion, of looking at those people that rave at you and go like, I see your pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was just like, I want that.
Yes, I want to be that calm.
I want to be that.
Yes.
And that was the beginning. That was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what, and I've never stopped working at it. It's never been a doubt since then. And at that point, I started to change my career patterns towards having my own business and doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in your business, you work with human health too, and not just veterinarians, but human health providers also, or anybody who's.
I do have quite a wide range of people that come, because a lot of it is through referral.
Mm-hmm.
So people are referred, and then like not one veterinarian is just going to refer another veterinarian. So they come from all kinds of backgrounds. But yeah, I love being able to work within the veterinary profession, because for me also, I'm so attached to animals' health. So I want people that work around animals to just have that like quiet mindset, and to be able to listen, and and it goes, every time somebody who works in the vet practice has that mindset and talks to people like that, it goes out into the world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does.
So with the animals, so I want that's really, I want to be able to do that. And then the thing is, I know how stressful that can be, just to because it's life and death. It
Yes.
is life and death. on so many levels every day. And, I think that's a big thing that we often we don't even really approach in our minds, that this is a big part of our stress, because, we don't think about death that much. And that is another thing for me that is a really important thing that I learned, is that death is part of life.
Mhm.
And, not just like, yeah, okay, well, it has to, but actually every time there is a little death in us, what I'm thinking is that, we don't think about death. We don't think about death as really being a part of life. I mean, there is this intellectual, of course it's a part of life, of course it's the end of life, but still we treat it as something that's not really part of life. It needs to be prevented at all costs, and it's really a problem if it occurs. And, so yes, it's hard, and yes, we want to prevent it. And yes, we do support the health, the living health of the animal over its spiritual health. Of course, these things are true. But in the larger picture, every death in our own lives, every time a part of it dies, we get to grow into something new. We get to be born into something new. And if we start to look at, the whole of our lives in more of that way, it's a little bit less fearful.
Yes. Yes. Well, when I first started as a part-time CSR, one of the managers who hired me was or had been in her other life, a surgical scrub nurse for a human side. And she had a perspective of, looking at all the people coming in for the years in the animal hospital and the human side of health. And she said, Debbie, here's what I've learned. There's worse things than death. When people are so afraid of letting their animals go, or they selfishly can't let their animals go, then their animals suffer for no reason, and humans suffer for no reason. So it is a gift that we can give people. And I think because of the training that I had, like from the very beginning of it, I never thought that it was necessarily a bad thing. And I have friends like, Danny McVetti and Mary Gardner, who started Lap of Love, which is in-home euthanasia. And the fact that you can make it a positive experience if you treat it appropriately, if you support the client appropriately, if you're looking at supporting the animal appropriately. In my perspective, is energy never leaves. And there's always energy around us from the people that we love. And my father died when I was 16. Many people in my family, my brother has passed away. He's 3 years younger than I was. But I feel like sometimes I have that guidance, especially from my father, because he was an excellent business person. And I feel like sometimes when I've had the most challenging business questions pop into my head, there's a voice behind me going, think about this, do this thing. And it kind of like, oh, this is a problem solver for me. So I with you there. I understand what you're talking about when we do not, but we don't even talk about death. Like my mother is 90, and the older you get, the more you talk about it, because as young people fear death, but old people are like, nah, it's all right. But my mother is hilarious because she just had her birthday in September, and she said, well, I guess we should have the party in the cemetery because that's where all my friends live. And but there's just there's a pragmatic attitude toward it when you get to be a certain age. It's like, it's coming. It's okay. But I love the fact that you're thinking about, let's not hide from this. It is a part of life, and we do have to move through it, and we need a skill set that moves us through grief, and helps us support other people in grief the same way.
Totally.
So when you were talking about the breathing, it's something I have taught for quite a while when I'm talking about dealing with conflict, is box breathing, because that sometimes it engages the smart part of your brain. It stops the hijack from happening. And it's such a simple thing. And when you start to breathe in a pattern, because we mirror, the people who are with you start to mirror the pattern, and they start to breathe slowly and rhythmically, just like you do. But takes a lot of self-discipline. How did you teach people to be disciplined enough mentally to be able to deal with this, and see what's happening in their own head? I feel like that's such a challenge for us.
Yeah. I don't teach anybody to be disciplined. I invite those that are, you know, I know my journey has been up and down and up and down and up and down. And discipline in the beginning was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, each of us are ready to go as far as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm open. I'm here to support a practice. Like, for example, I have a Monday meditation that I've been doing for over 2 years. So anybody who can drop in with that and have like a thing. It's a good thing to have a group,
Mm-hmm.
that you like. A, you start to pay for it. B, you get to make friends in it, so you get to go more often. And then, if like, okay, I'm going to be there for the next 5 days every day, or for the next 8 weeks once a week,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to come back to it, because a lot of the time, if we just do something once, we find the benefit, but then the part of us that doesn't really want to change will quickly come back and just like bury it again over every day, with everyday like old habits, so yeah, I think really the support comes in the commitment. And the only way I facilitate that commitment really is by say, give me some money
Yeah.
that'll make it worth your while.
Right. Yes.
And and then to say like, okay, well, what do you want? Do you want to just start, change, know the processes? Then that's not going to take so long. Can you take it from there? Or do you really want like in-depth support for like the next 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
So that you really get into a habit of thinking differently, because that really is where the charm starts to be, is like to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, so that you not only do you see like, oh yeah, this is worthwhile, but the what do they call that again, the nerve structures, the nerve
The neuropath, the path.
near those ones, exactly. They start to run along different lines, and you really see the stress that you're putting yourself under, and you just like, so this morning, for example, like getting ready for this podcast, like my phone just says bling, hey, you don't have any more data until tomorrow. I'm like, oh, and I really fall into this like, oh my goodness, and how can that be in the phone? And then my husband walks past and says, hey, do you want to use my phone? And in that moment, I could just let it go and say like, oh my goodness, this universe is awesome.
Yes.
Look at that. He's not meant to be home. He's home just
Right. It
give me
provides. The universe provides. Yeah.
I know. And so once you start, training your mind to look for those, life just becomes smooth,
Mm-hmm.
like really, really smooth. And then when you fall into the drama, because we fall into drama, it happens, we're human, and like you quicker get into like, oh my, what am I doing?
Right. You recognize it. You recognize the drama that you're getting sucked into, and you go, okay,
Exactly.
I need
Exactly. And you can laugh at yourself. I'm like, sometimes I describe it. I've got there is the Chinese laughing Buddha. It's that little fat little man they sell for the gardens and stuff.
Yes. Just
And sometimes I just have him sit in my belly, and you just like, whenever it's just this laughter bubbles up, and it's so so sweet, and yeah.
Yes. Well, and it's funny. You can use that humor. You can use the laughter to de-escalate things too. So if you,
oh yeah, so much.
You really have to be a good judge of this, because I would have clients that would go, oh my gosh, this is so expensive, and I would go, yes, but at least you won't have to buy your dog a car when he turns 16 or Air Jordans, because that was the day when Air Jordans were the thing. And they would go, you know what, you're exactly right. I said, not to mention the fact he never talks back, and he's really, happy to see you every day, instead of those teenagers that you live with.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh yeah, so you can use humor to let people see the humor in a situation too,
mm-hmm.
instead of becoming defensive and starting to escalate a situation. And or that, I used to call it new veterinary guilt, when veterinarians would come to work for us and they didn't know the price of anything, so they would just circle the services that they had performed. And then once they started to learn how much things cost, I started to notice that they would skip things. They were, oh, it only took me like 5 minutes to do this, or no, I don't think I'll charge for that. And we would have a
Mhm.
little refresher course on how to appropriately circle things on your travel sheets. And because they would start to feel guilty about things, about their services. And
Mhm.
oh, you know what? You have 8 years of education and a whole lot of experience here. Don't be afraid to charge for what you do, but make sure that you are communicating well enough to where people understand
Mhm.
why you're doing the things that you're doing and what the benefit is to them and to their pet. And a lot of times we skip that part. We just forget to tell the
Mhm.
people and educate the people. And when I was training my staff, I said, our job is to teach people to be really good pet owners so they don't need us
Mhm.
except for routine stuff. Because if
Yes.
we can educate them ahead of that, then that's great. Our job is to keep animals healthy and safe and not to put out fires all the time, because that's, first of all, it's going back to death. My Lord, that's when things get really hairy, when you're trying to save something from the brink of death that could have been avoided. Which is
Mhm.
the thing is, let's just teach people how to avoid getting their animals in trouble, because they're animals and they will eat anything. Really, really will.
Yes.
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 Um, but yeah, I love the fact that you're just, inviting people to look inside their head a little bit, and
Mhm.
instead of just being reactive, and understand those neuro pathways. The challenge with the pathways is the old ones never disappear. And I think that's an awareness that we need to have, is because they can creep back in on you
Mhm.
so easily that you have to always have this little warning signal in your mind going, oh, you showed back up again, let me talk to you and send you back to where you belong. I tell this story about these pathways. My husband used to smoke, and he would stop by the convenience store on his way home from work, and he would get a 6-pack of beer and a pack of cigarettes. So one night, like 15 years after he quit smoking, put the beer on the counter and said, and hand me a pack of Vantage. And then he went, wait a minute, I don't smoke. Where did that come from? It was an old pathway that popped back up. And it was like, oh my gosh, it does. So I think that's something that's really important for us to know about ourselves, is that the pathways do show back up. And the other thing that you said about having a group, it's accountability. It's having somebody
Mhm.
who is expecting you to be there, who you feel like they'll miss you if you're not there. Or they'll say, you committed to do this and now you're not committed. I've often used it in training staff, calling it the Weight Watchers theory of people management, where
Mhm.
you have to go in and weigh at a stranger. It has to put you on a scale, and you go, oh yeah, I'm going to make sure I lose weight this week, because I don't want this stranger looking at my scale and going, you gained 2 pounds. That's not the way we want it to work. So I feel like that accountability piece of it is so important. Same thing for when we're trying to make any kind of change in our
Mhm.
practice. This is what I do as a consultant. I come back to the practice, and I come back because I want to make sure that the change is happening. Because if I don't come back, there's like no accountability, and things just get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and change
Mhm.
doesn't happen. So how do you encourage people to get started? I mean, what would be for you? You kind of talked about, just getting into a point in your life where you felt like things were going on a downward spiral. It doesn't necessarily have to be that dramatic, but people could, just feel a little, feel a lot of stress, or feel like they have no
Mhm.
control of their life, or feel like they can't say no to people. How would you encourage those people who are just not feeling quite like they should, not having the joy in their life or their job, to get started on a better path or building a new path?
Mhm. Um, so I think there is two places of it. So there is are you looking to make a big change, or are you looking to stay with where you're at? Are you just trying to improve what you're doing, right? So I think there's always room for bringing more joy into our lives. So a good time to start with doing this is like when something comes in front of you and you have that thought of like, should I do this? Should I work into a time into this? And if you're feeling like you're drawn to it, but then the thought comes, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, then this is the thing. Go for it.
Go for it.
because really it is. And in my experience, what I have found is that if I then say, okay, yes, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, but I want it, something shifts that allows me to go with it.
Mhm.
So money will come from somewhere I didn't expect, or I send them a message saying, I really want this. Can you give me an offer? And things move
Mhm.
like that. So to have an awareness that we will sabotage ourselves from moving forward and moving out of the negative drama, like the painful drama, into a better pattern, there is resistance. So just to know this and, and go like, okay, yes, this is going to be a little hard, but I will do it anyway.
Mhm.
Because I like the end result. I like the end result. And so, yes, we will going to have, there's not, as long as we're alive as humans, until such a time we're enlightened, like these amazing teachers, there's going to be some amount of drama,
Mhm.
but it will get less. It will get less. And that is something we can really work on. And it makes life so much more fun if I can walk into a practice like as a supervisor, for example, and I've got like two warring fractions and they come to me and go like, well, they should be doing this and well, they should be doing that. And I can see how they're both right. And that is how I can approach it. And I can both like, recognize both of them, like say like, yes, I can see you doing a good job doing that. And yes, you can see you doing a good job doing that. And how can we communicate that better to each other, without falling into a fight here?
Mhm.
Like things like that. It just makes you feel so satisfied with yourself when
Yes.
you go
Totally.
home that day. You go
Yeah.
like, ha,
Yeah.
I did that well.
Yes.
And then you get like these little messages that I get from, some people on on LinkedIn that nominate their supervisors or nominate their mentors and go like, this person is always there. They are patient. They are kind. They are supportive. They have good things to say. They have wise words. And by understanding our patterns and not falling into the drama, this is what comes up because this is our nature as well, is the loving, the kind, the supportive, the wise. If it's not overshadowed by trying to be defensive and not holding out, pushing away pain. So any time is a good time to start this. The work is harder when you're at the bottom.
Mhm.
If you just want to improve, you're already doing fine and you just want to improve, the work is easier.
Mhm. Yeah. Don't have far to go. Yeah. You don't.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
do think that looking, over the years, I've managed hundreds of people, interviewed hundreds of people, worked with students, hundreds and hundreds of students. And some people just go through life in this kind of negativity. And then other people are very receptive. And so when I was teaching, I would have all these wonderful reviews. This is a great class. I really enjoyed it. Wonderful speaker. And then there would be this one who were like, this is nothing new, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, wow, were you in the room with the other 50 people? Because I don't feel like you were. But I can't own that because that's her receptivity to the offerings that I have. The other people enjoyed it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I've made an impact on 49 people. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
not sweat about the 50th one. And I feel like a lot of times veterinarians, particularly, are like, well, I have 99 positive reviews on my website, and there's this one. And they go, well, what is the one? And they explain it. And well, so, you're never going to please everyone. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay because you've pleased
Totally.
nine. And you have to give yourself permission to not be a people pleaser all the time. Because if you please everybody, sometimes they want to take advantage of you. And that's not the people that you should be pleasing, or they could never be pleased because where they are is
Mm-hmm.
a bad place and you can't fix their bad place. They have to want to come out of it on their own. So we just work around that, but we can't let it come into our world, our joy, our peace, and
Mm-hmm.
break that for us. We just have to be able to say, no, I am giving you grace. I understand where you're coming from. I hate that that is where you come from, but I can't own that. That's you, that's yours. And this is, if you want me to help you with it, I'll help you with it, but I'm not going to let you drag me into the drama or down into that rabbit hole. But that
Yeah.
sometimes comes with age and experience, because we do find that when we're young, tend to get involved in drama much more readily than when we're old and we're going, there is no way I'm getting into that mess. I used to, every morning on the way to work, I was hired to kind of fix a very toxic practice. And on the way to work, I would think about the things I needed to do and the people and who, were kind of on board with improving the culture, and the other ones who were never going to change to improve the culture. And I would just say, give me the words and the wisdom. That would be my prayer every morning. Words and wisdom to say the right thing and to know what would be the right thing to do. And I think when you ask for those things from the universe, they come to you and you're able to do what you need to do when those situations arise. And you know what the right thing to do is. It's the other thing, but we don't listen very well to the universe when it tells us things. And that's to have peace in our mind in order to be able to listen. So I think, that's where the meditation comes in. People think you have to like sit in a room and, lotus pose and do all the things, right? Wear your yoga clothes to meditate, but you really don't. You just have to calm your mind and kind of listen to yourself or listen to the universe, guide you where it needs you to go. And
Right.
just relax.
Right. Yeah, there is a big part of relaxation. I like my meditation. It's my entry into meditation is a full body relaxation, just really getting in touch with my body. And that makes a big difference. Debbie, I do want to like go 2 steps back to something you said. And it's like, so I think it's totally very wise to be able to say like, that one person, I can't please everybody. So like, this is totally right. At the same time, for me, it's also that there is no mistake in the universe. There is that person pushes your button for a reason. So there is something for you to be learned if you have the time and the inclination. You don't have to take it on, but chances are, because it hurts, it is actually yours. So if you can, take that, for what I do with clients, and this is the process of the work. I go like, okay, so what is it that you think about them, and then so like they are unreasonable. Okay, so can I turn this around? Am I unreasonable thinking everybody should love me? Like, yeah. Right? Or they're mean, can I turn this around? Can I see how they're not mean? Can I look at this one person and say like, okay, well, maybe they're not in a good space. Maybe they're, and can I look at, can I turn this around to me and go like, how is it that at looking at this person, I am mean? And maybe it's just a little thing. And so if we use those judgments that we have on other people, we can really open our own mind and our heart, because the openness of our heart follows the openness of our mind a huge degree by saying like, okay, so yes, it's not my fault, yet I feel that it hurts me. So what is there? Like that. So that's what I wanted to say.
I love that you brought that up, because I feel like when we have people who are difficult or who complain and we want to dismiss that, like it's not my fault and it's just them, it's not. And there may be something that we did to trigger it. And so that's why I like to kind of backtrack the event.
Yes.
So where was the tipping point that it went south, that we can go back and go, okay, I see that this was something I said that triggered that. And in the future, I will know better. I have this amazing example of just something so simple that no one would ever have thought that this would be a trigger. But a veterinarian was doing an exam on, I can't remember what, the pet or dog, a cat or dog. And the client was very chatty and she was talking, they were having conversation. And when the doctor put her stethoscope in and she tried to listen to the heart and lungs, she just pointed her finger to the sky and like, hold that thought just a minute. Well, the woman became irate because she felt that was so disrespectful. And come to find out after it was, that it was talked out, her grandmother used to do that to her when she was a child and make her be quiet when she was trying to talk and it just struck her, this memory, this childhood event came back to her, and the veterinarian meant no harm. And who would have thought, now personally, I would have thought I would have just said to the client, if you could just hold your thought for just a minute while I listen, then we'll pick the conversation back up. Then that would have stopped it all. But it was a learning tool, right? So it actually ended up being a learning tool for the veterinarian, just to not point your finger at people and make them, because she'd probably been doing it for a long time and it didn't bother anybody else, but it bothered this one person. So we didn't really know what will trigger people into, kind of going down the path. A lot of the reading I've done in psychology and psychotherapy stuff from psychologists and psychiatrists is like all problems of today are typically rooted in the past.
Right.
And whether it was something you did, but it could have been an event that happened at another practice or with another person that maybe was similar to what was going on here. And that one went a bad way. And so this person automatically becomes defensive because she's thinking, oh, this is going to be just like that one. This is going to turn out that way. They're not going to help me. I'm going to have to go to battle to fight for my animal or whatever it is that I want. And that you can't know that, but you could have awareness of how things could come across and be open to finding out what you did that triggered it. I think a lot of chatter has been going on recently in the last year, particularly about practices firing clients because they don't take any crap whatsoever, right? It's just, you're gone. Well, I understand that people are being fractious, more so than ever, but we are too, because we are equally as tired, equally as stressed, equally have gone through pandemics and social unrest. And we have to take some ownership of the fact that we are just as fragile as the public and own the fragility, right? We are traumatized. And we can't just push it all off. I know it's only the clients. No, it's us too. It's going both ways. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Debbie, I think that is, that is such an important piece to just be aware of because it is all of us together. There is, and so this is, you can take that both ways. You could say like, oh my goodness, that means it's never going to change, but right. But that just means we're in a phase of a very fast evolution right now. So we are moving very fast. And right now it's a bottleneck and it's really scary. It's like really scary, very unsettling. But it's a growth phase. And the other way you can look at it is like we're all in this together. So like let's look around and go like, okay, look, so in any one moment I can see 10 people very happy, 10 people upset, 10 people sad. It's a thing, like it's all of us together. So we all move through that. And like the person that screams at you might help the beggar on the road. Next thing, we don't know. So we change and when we don't like take it and this is the moment and this is all there is, then it's really easier to deal with things, I think. Yeah. And then also, what you said, like lots of things go back to our childhood or things that happened before. And like that's what's often with clients, what people say to me is like, oh, I didn't think I'm traumatized. But the thing is the traumas can be small. They can be so small. Like one of my major trauma is because I grew up in Germany, every child had to go to kindergarten. And I've hated school for 12 years.
Oh my goodness.
And like, so it happens and it's like small things and nobody meant anything bad about it. But to that little girl who had to leave home at 3, it wasn't acceptable.
Yeah.
And and these are the things we carry, and these are the things that trigger us. So it doesn't mean like we've grown up with horrible parents at all.
No. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she said she's a life coach, and she said, I have a client who won't unpack her apartment. And we found out after much discussion that the reason she won't pack her apartment is if she decorates it, her mother will be so judgmental that she didn't do it appropriately or didn't put things where they're supposed to be, that she
Mhm,
avoids the judgment completely by just not unpacking. And I went, wow. I mean, you just, and that her mother didn't mean to traumatize her like
mhm,
that she probably critiqued her to try to think that she was going to be, improving her, or
mhm.
making her
Exactly.
into her own mini me. A lot of times I think that's happening. But those things are traumatizing to
Yes.
young minds.
Mhm,
And we always want the approval of our parents, and making sure that we're doing, the appropriate things. But our parents are human too. And
exactly.
everybody's just doing the best they can, right? That is just,
Mhm,
I think sometimes we have to just give our parents some grace and go, you know what? If I had been raising two kids in the middle of whatever it was, then I probably would have done the same thing. And it was not intentional on your part to do this harm. And now I have to look at it myself and go, okay, I am no longer a child, and I do not have
mhm,
to have the approval of my mother to decorate my apartment. And I'm also going to have to learn to move into conflict when she says something to me that's inappropriate, is to say, you know what, this is my apartment, and it's
mhm,
decorated the way I like it. So,
mhm.
you decorate your house your way, I'm going to decorate my house my way, and we're both fine with that. We'll both be fine with that. But
Exactly.
we avoid that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I actually have a very similar thing. That for years I cleaned my house because my mother. And once I had unraveled that for myself and, gotten through it, my mom turned around one day on the phone without me ever having to go into conflict with her and said, you know, you do so well decorating. You really have a hand for that. And this is what I find is that when I'm clear on me, when it's like undone in me,
Mhm.
the world does not show it to me anymore.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love this.
Yeah. Mm.
This is such a great thread. I love this conversation, because I don't think we really explore the things that affect us in our
No.
work, because a lot of those things happen in the home. And sometimes our work can be the safe haven. It can be the respite
Mhm.
from whatever is happening in other parts of our lives. And I worked to the businesses that I ran, I worked to make it that way. I wanted it to be a fun place to come. I wanted it to be
Mhm.
relaxing to work there, even though it was hard physical work. It didn't have to be mentally negative. It could be
Mhm.
fun. You could joke around. You could find the humor in some of the ridiculous stuff that would come through. And I don't think that client bashing is particularly fun. I don't like it at all, as a matter of fact. But dogs and cats, particularly, will do very funny things.
Mhm.
And we could laugh at those things. It gets them into a lot of trouble, but sometimes you just scratch your head and go, really? How in the heck did you manage to eat a Hot Wheels car? Because I still
Uh-huh.
to this day can see this x-ray in my mind of the little axles in the stomach of this
Mhm.
dog that ate a car. But we just have to find the fun. And I
Mhm.
like, a lot of times we've lost that. We During the pandemic, we were, again, very fragile, very traumatized. Every time, humans don't like disruption, right? We like routine. We like to know what's going to happen the next thing. And when there's disruption, our sense of safety it diminishes, and then we really
Mhm.
start to go into this amygdala hijack. But we lost that, and so the things that we would have found humor in before, maybe we didn't, or everything all of a sudden, like the sky was falling on us. And I think the younger you were, the more affected you were by those things. My mother, as I said, was 90, went through the whole pandemic like, she had already been through two. It didn't matter to her.
Uh-huh.
And she was not afraid of getting out into the world and doing whatever she wanted to do. She took precautions as was appropriate, but
Mhm.
she still did not go and hide in the corner. But many young people were so afraid to
Mhm.
do anything, to get out of the house, to do anything. And there were people who, reacted on both sides of the spectrum, when
Yes.
somewhere, as usual, the happy medium was the logical place to be. But we're human beings, and we often don't live in the logical place in the middle, because our mind just takes us off on these tangents. But
Mhm.
I feel like having more conversations about this, about kind of the things that happen to us that create us and create our persona, is
Mhm.
an important thing that we can talk about in veterinary medicine, but just in life. I
Mhm.
think I've said often the two things that I think would be so important for us to teach in school would be how your mind works and how to manage money. Because if you manage those two things, life is golden. You have got it made. So there you go.
Yeah,
Steph,
totally.
this has been wonderful. I really have enjoyed having a conversation with you, and we're going to put your contact information in the show notes. Let people be able to get in contact with you. Hopefully, engage in some of your classes. Definitely read your books, and hopefully have an epiphany that they really have control. They can manage these things, and I think that's
Mhm.
we really have to understand that we can control what how we react to things, and we cannot um, let people take us down a path that we don't want to go to. And I think that's really pertinent. So I like to wrap up with any final words of wisdom, anything you particularly like for people to know about you, or maybe a favorite quote or a favorite book that you would recommend.
Yeah, the quote that I was it's so funny. Like the quote that came to me earlier is like, I'm a total Harry Potter geek. I've like read Harry Potter, I don't know how often now. Not the movies. Like I mean the movies are fine, but the books. Um, and I quote them left, right, and center because I think there's some really good quotes in there. And one of them is the universal popularity, like what you said. And this is Dumbledore to Hagrid, because Hagrid, like, it's been told once again, he's a giant and he's dirty and da da da, and he's hiding in his hut. And Dumbledore says to him, if you're waiting for universal popularity, you're going to be in your hut for a very long time.
That's true. That is absolutely
Uh-huh.
yeah. And I too
And
love
I love,
the Harry Potter books. They're on my bookcase. Every single one of them lined up in order. And
mhm,
I was one of those people who I didn't wait in line to read them as they came out. I got into them a little bit late, so I didn't have to
mhm,
wait long periods of
right.
between them. And so I cheated a little bit when I read the series, but still love them. And
Uh-huh.
the writing is wonderful. And you're right. There's my other favorite character to quote is Winnie the Pooh, because I love Pooh, and Pooh has some wonderful quotes too.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And I like that there is this vision, the Tao of Pooh.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yes, yeah,
yeah, which is the bear coming out and then doing commentary on the Tao, which is my other favorite book. Um, and the Tao it's a book on leadership, um, on how a lead. So there is a very famous quote that creeps up all over again. It's like when the leader is done, when the master is done with the work, the people say we did it.
yes.
So there is a lot of lovely, lovely, lovely things in the Tao, and um, it just lives somewhere around me all the time, and I keep picking it up, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep, yep. I agree. I agree. Lots of good stuff out there if we take the time to learn it. That's the thing. Just it really. I was having a conversation with one of my friends who also used to manage hospitals, and I said,
Mhm,
"Oh, what I would have given to have known then what I know now when I was 30 and managing these
mm,
practices." And he said, "Oh gosh, Deb, me too, me too."
mhm,
But there's no reason that those managers out there, those leaders out there now can't learn these things. And I think
mhm,
that's the important thing for us to know, even though we work in a scientific and medical profession. if we learn how to people, if we learn how to human, our lives become much better, and we have much more joy in what we do, no matter what it is. It's not really, it's not the hours that you put in, it's what you put into the hours that matter, and how you enjoy the things that you are doing. And so keeping that, that work-life balance, I think that's garbage. I think that it is entirely having enough happy things in your life to offset the sad things that are going to happen, and keeping that into perspective. And if you're doing things that give you joy 60 hours a week, then don't feel guilty about not doing it. Have at it. If you are doing something that you hate for 20 hours a week, change jobs, because life is too short. We get one chance at this thing, and you need to enjoy what you're doing. So don't stick it out. You can find the magic out there somewhere, because they do exist. So, well,
Exactly.
thank you so much again. We'll make sure that everybody can get in touch with you and encourage them to take some of your training, because I think it's the things that we can solve in veterinary medicine are often solved with good communication and introspection.
Yes, absolutely. Introspection, self-awareness, and self-compassion, because the more we can really, I mean, I know this is like a total platitude, but the more you love yourself, the easier it's going to be to do it to others.
Give yourself a little grace. It's fine.
Yes.
It's fine. It really will be fine. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Steph. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us this time on this episode of The Bend. We appreciate your attention, and we appreciate you connecting with our guests, and we hope that you learned something that will be of value to you. Thank you.